Let's turn into the advisory now. Our next guest says every woman needs a menopause fund, with damning statistics showing 1 in 3 women alter their careers due to symptoms. 1 in 7 leave the workforce altogether. Peita Diamantidis is co-founder of Caboodle Financial Services and joins us now. Peita, great to see you. Now, you and I met at an event a couple of weeks ago. You discussed this with me. I'd never heard of this before, but really damning statistics there.
It really is, and what is quite horrifying to me is it's even bigger than childbirth for women in the workforce. I mean, we all focus on that, and maternity leave is so important. But if you think about a woman maybe having a few kids, she might have, 3 or 4 years or maybe 5 years out of the workforce. If a woman quits work entirely because of the symptoms of perimenopause, she's probably cut short her working life by 15 years.
Wow.
That will decimate her super. It's done before she even really gets to retirement age.
And it also is that time when you're unlikely to be able to get another job. You're not young.
Yes, and you're already in that strange spot for employers where going for another job, it's like, well, how close are you to retiring? They want young, new talent. I hate to say it, but you can become a bit invisible as talent. So it's exactly the wrong time for this to be happening. It's quite horrifying.
So, are you dealing with clients, women in your sphere who have had this happen to them?
Yes, multiples. And of course, the layering on this is that the same women are often the ones having to look after aged parents.
Yeah.
So this is
the perimenopause
perimenopause, exactly. So perimenopause symptoms, multiple of, generally it's not one, lot to deal with. And then aged parents, and the combination causes them to be so desperate, they literally throw their hands up in the air and quit.
And what happens, obviously, as you say, every woman needs a menopause fund. There might be some women that are okay, they've got a spouse. How damning is it for those that maybe don't, or whose spouse maybe doesn't earn as much as them?
Yeah, and it's about having choices. And I think we all know, and I'm sure we've all been when we were much younger, when you get put into a corner, you make bad choices and extreme ones. To me, the menopause fund says, all right, things aren't working, I'm struggling. Do I reduce my hours? Do I take a day off? Or do I hire a chef once a week to cook all the meals because I just need more bandwidth? And I think, to me, that's what comes down to this. Aside from medical costs, which can be extreme, so there's a lot of new wonderful treatments now, but very few of them are covered. So you're going to have to fork out some money to get the great experience you'd like. And so they need money to cope with that.
So what is the menopause fund? Should women be looking at this from their 20s, or how do you sort of look at this?
Yeah, look, I'd kick it off in your 30s. I think the 20s is just too much fun. So we've got no chance, right? So maybe start building an emergency fund in the 20s, just the backup. To me, the menopause fund is then the emergency fund you'll need. Whereas the emergency fund is just in case, right? Whereas this one, every woman will go through perimenopause. It's a given. So in their 30s, $200 a month put away, and by the time she hits maybe late 40s, early 50s, she'll have at least 50K that would just give her options. Take 3 to 4 months off. Or worst case, or best case, it's not too bad, so she goes with the girls to Santorini for a month. Whatever is appropriate, but it just gives them options.
What has the reaction been to you going out and speaking of this concept?
Yeah, it's surprising how surprising it is, because it is literally on half the population's life stage. It's coming. And because it's not something we're talking about medically until just recently, and let's be frank, there are GPs out there that'll just tell you to take a Panadol, right? So it's not being addressed well medically, then of course financially it's ignored. So I think, unfortunately, it's medically hasn't gone fast enough for then the whole financial services area to think, wait a minute, we need to prepare women for this. And interestingly enough, I was chatting to Molly Benjen about that, and when we were chatting about it, she's like, oh, does that mean we put more into super? Because that's our instinct, right? We just go, oh, we'll put more in super. Well, of course, you can't get that money until much later. So you need this to be accessible. It could be invested, but particularly if you start in your 30s, that'd be a great idea. But it's got to be accessible so you can liquidate it if you need to.
What do you think employers should potentially be doing too? If there's paternity leave, there's mental health leave, do we need to be looking at things like menopausal leave?
Yeah, look, I think a good start is certainly flexibility, and we hear that word a lot. And in fact, there's been some pushback from employers about that. But just the ability to reduce the hours by a couple of hours a day would make a huge difference for some women. Some of these symptoms can be as bad as severe arthritis sort of impact, so it's quite difficult to deal with. So I think they can provide more flexibility and just understand the impact. If male or female had a heart attack in midlife, which is the sort of thing where that's your risk, right? At that point, heart attack or stroke, Of course the employer would say, yes, take time off to do what you need to do, and then whatever you need to come back. Like, that would be a given for a good employer. That mentality, I don't believe, exists for almost any employers when it comes to perimenopause. And I think we need to get to that point to recognise, like, your body is turned against you. This is not something that, it's hot flushes. You know, it's just so much more than that.
Do you think that the tide is changing, though, with conversations? Because I think 10 years ago people were not talking about
I didn't even know what
this.
perimenopause was until a couple of years ago, and I was watching The Gruen last night, actually, and I was very pleased to know that I wasn't the only one hadn't heard of it until just recently. This is a real, groundswell of attention that's being paid. I think it's really timely.
It is. I mean, once there's an Oprah special, you know that that's getting attention on something. But I do think women need to be talking to women about this and generationally sharing. I mean, we do have all of this insight and experience, but like you say, most women are surprised that this can be so significant.
So something like $200 a month, and just more broadly, what are you saying in terms of women being more financially literate and being more engaged, I guess, with their finances, including their super too?
Yeah, look, I think I would actually shift what they're trying to achieve from literacy to just well-being. I did a workshop a month ago for some fabulous women in Newcastle, all doctors, and we did a little test beforehand, and their literacy was through the roof for finance. Fabulous. Zero confidence when it came to money. So, knowledge isn't action.
Yeah.
So I think what we need to give people is frameworks and mindsets that just help them make good choices. And so far more of that is coaching style. Far less of it is, I need to know how percentages work, or things like that, which, to be fair, my industry does focus a little on when it comes to financial literacy. So I think it's more about how do you make these decisions and how do you feel empowered to make them.